Hello everybody, so in this video I'm going to show you how I've done the timing belt swap on the Audi A4. So for those of you not familiar with the channel, this is quite a rare one. It's a 2.4 V6 manual, so the process involved in changing belt is a little bit more complex than the 4-cylinder models. So we're going to get in there, I'm going to time-lapse the video because as you can imagine it's hours and hours of work. I don't want to bore everybody and I'll try and voice over some of it explaining what I am doing. We're also going to change the water pump while we're in there. There's an interesting discovery we make on the previous timing setup of the car, which goes some way to explain a fault code that came up in VCDS. So if you ever wondered how hard it is, how long it takes, some of the challenges that you can come up against, then stay tuned. Right, so let's get into this one then. So first job of the day was removing the indicator lenses and then the headlamps. So as you can see, pretty straightforward. I think the hardest bit was getting the connections off the back. They were a wee bit tight and I think that was just with old age, trying to wrestle with them there a bit, getting them out. But yeah, they eventually gave in and we got those headlights out the way. Next was front bumper, and again I hadn't taken one of these off before, so a lot of it was trial and error, and I had actually referred to a few YouTubes to try and get some hints and tips. But yeah, there was a few little hidden bolts there, so as you can see they were all getting loosened off quite nicely, and the bit that I did have trouble with was where it fits in on the join to the front wings. There's a couple of little grooves that they set in with clips that just press in. So that was actually really difficult to get them released. So as you can see there, I was using a very long flathead screwdriver to try and lever them and pull that bumper away, and then it finally gave in and came away. So the next job was to remove the radiator panel, leave the radiator attached to it. So that was a plan. So those little beams there that support the front bumper, there's some big Torx bolts around that hold that on to the car. So that was a case of just getting those off. And the same at the other side, so no issues there with that. Looks like they'd already been off before because there was one missing, and then that was a case of getting all the wiring, multi-plugs and things behind the radiator there, coolant hoses, and disconnecting all of that so we could try and move the whole lot forwards. Now you can see I was trying to get the actual other radiator hose off. And there was a few more little bolts that were just holding on a pipework there to come off. And it was just another check around to make sure I wasn't missing anything, which as you can see I had missed 2 bolts. And then the whole front panel comes away, which was easy. Again, we were still getting stuck on that rubber mount at the bottom. That was a bit tricky. And then that bottom radiator hose as well, there's little clips that holds the hose onto the radiator. That had corroded, so I ended up just ripping that one out. The clip, that is, not the hose. And that's it, front end off. So that's me getting into removing the viscous fan there. And it was just a matter of removing everything out of the road to get into those timing belt covers. So that was a serpentine belt coming off there, belt tensioner, one of the timing belt covers. Then I was loosening the bolts there around the crank pulley. And that's the crank pulley off. And now we're trying to get the pulley for the viscous fan off. Right guys, we need to time the engine up before I take this cam belt off. So I've got this here, this is just a locking pin for the crank. Now, you won't be able to see it on camera where it goes, but up there about halfway along the block there's a little blanking plug and o-ring that you take out, and this just screws in by hand like that and then locks the crank in place. Right, so there's the crank locked in place, so you can see that's there, and our line, that lines up as well perfectly with that little cover. Now then what you have to do is lock cam sprockets together, and as you can see we're a tooth out by the looks of it. If you put it on that one, yeah, it still doesn't go in, so it does look like, I suspect this one is a tooth out, and that is maybe what's causing this fault code that's coming up with the cam timing being out on bank 2. So So I think that's probably what will be causing the issue that we're seeing with the error code on bank 2. Right, so here we're taking the plastic cover off the back of the crank pulley, and then we're getting a little Allen key in there and taking the tension off the belt so we can hopefully remove it. And there you see that's the belt coming off there. The next job is take off that thermostat housing. We'll place the thermostat while we're in there, just for practicality. And the next will be to remove the water pump, again as well, changing that just while we're in there. And it's not too difficult, there's only about 5 or 6 bolts around there. Except there was a little bit of difficulty in accessing one of the top ones, but that's it off now. Now we're on with the cam belt tensioner damper. There's a little arm there as well, just taking those 2 off with replacement ones in the set that arrived. And then just removing that idler pulley there. Now this is a replacement water pump going in. I'd actually cleaned everything up before I put these on, I just didn't cover that in the video. Next is that thermostat getting put in there, and along with the thermostat housing, there's a little seal that goes in before that as well. And then just a quick clean up around that, that bottom sprocket. And that's the tensioner damper going in, and the little arm there that sits between the damper and the tensioner pulley itself. There was a brand new tensioner fitted as well, and idler pulley. Okay guys, we've got everything torqued up now. I've just done that off camera, marked all the bolts up that we've done with a wee red dot, so we know we've done them. So we've got our new tensioner in there, new tensioner arm, new tensioner pulley, new idler pulley, we've got new water pump there you can see, and what else we've got? We've got a new thermostat hiding behind there. And then what also done off camera was I slackened the cam sprockets, which I believe you have to do. And then also we've got our bar in there to hold the cams in position. So we'll get that belt dropped on now and see how we got on with that. Right, so that's a new timing belt going on. Just putting it down around the crank pulley there, and then routing it round all the other various pulleys. The idea here is you leave all the slack on the driver's side bank so that when you take that pin out of the tensioner, that pulls it tight. And that's the cam sprocket alignment bar going back in, and the belt just fitting over that cam sprocket there. So that's all looking pretty good. And then that was basically time then to pull the pin out and release the tension on the tensioner. Then you apply a wee bit more tension on that manually. I can't remember the torque figure, but this was a case of where we're just basically taking the crank sprocket bolts back out, putting the thread lock on them there, and then torquing them back up. And I was just marking the belt there just so we could do just a quick sanity check after we've rotated it a few cycles. That was a backing plate going on there for the crank pulley. And sticking the crank pulley itself back on. There's a few bolts to go on inside there. Here we've got another pulley to fit here. I think that's just an idler pulley, that one. There's only a couple of bolts on that. And then we're getting one engine cover back on. How good is that? Then the next cover's going on, and the last one. So it's beginning to look like an engine again. And then that's the serpentine belt tensioner going in there. And then that final pulley going on the front of the engine. And you can see the serpentine belt going on there. And then just releasing the tension and getting the belt on. And then we're just putting the viscous fan coupling and the fan itself. And we're getting really close to completion now. And now this is getting the whole front end back on, so there was a bit of back and forth here to get that lined up and connect up the radiator hoses at the bottom. It did take a little bit of doing, but we did eventually get there in the end. It was a case of just putting a couple of bolts in on the wing there just to hold it all in place, and then various different pieces of wiring and pipe work that had to be reattached. It wasn't actually as bad as it looks, it kind of all made sense. And then the aircon rad just going back on there, that just sits in place on the front there. A couple little brackets to hold it on. And then it was coming back off again, just to fit some more wiring that we had missed. And then that looked like it finally on there. Then it was a case of just getting the front end lined up with the trolley jack there and the bolts in. Right, wish me luck. Front end's reassembled. Yeah, we don't have the bumper on, but that doesn't matter for starting it. Coolant in it, battery back on. I think everything's connected, so wish me luck. Fingers crossed, don't hear a big bang, and everything's timed up correctly. Sounds alright, seems to be running. We'll let that warm up. Let's have a look for any warning lights on the dash. There's no warning lights on the dash, so it'll be interesting once we get it warmed up to plug it into VCDS and see if that cam phase code comes back up.